10 o'clock we have to start, so 1 more minute to go. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I prepared MCQs because this year MCQ technical are very important. Normal MCQ which are there on the website I am refining. So by 10th, the uploading will happen again, and we will take the last 5 days on the rest of the MCQ also. But 15 days we will concentrate on the technical parts because that also need the descriptive thing. So I have realized that FTI also concentrate a lot on aesthetic part of the question paper rather than the techno things. So not too much of technical things are going to be asked in the descriptive. So a lot of aesthetics are being discussed, discuss a photograph, discuss a painting, discuss a lighting situation, which was a wonderful question a couple of years back, last 2 years or so, 3 maybe. So we'll start now. So these are the questions which I have prepared. I have not taken even a single question from what some of you have sent. It is a pity and shame also that only 4 to 5 students send few questions around. Someone has sent 5, some 10, some 20. But I picked up my own questions because I took a help from a colleague of mine, basically a student who's working in Bombay as a cinematographer. So he's relatively free because he's not having a shoot. So he helped me to prepare all these questions. So I have to cross-check before I send it. And if in case if you have a question, you can ask it while we are going through it. Okay, gentlemen. So we are starting now. Let me just check the recording is going on. Okay. So first is film speed refers to. So there are 4 options. Film speed at which film moves through the camera. No, that is not the speed. That is actually what we call it as a frame per second. The speed at which film moves through the camera, we call it as a frame per second. In a 1 second, how many frames are being exposed? 24 frame per second. Sometimes we shoot high speed, then 24 become 48. Sometimes it become 100 frame, 200 frame, even up to that much. Not every camera can go, but certain cameras can go to the high speed. So that is not the speed. Length of the film roll, no. 400 feet or 1000 feet is nothing to do with the film speed. Very good alternative. Film sensitivity. So film speed refer to the film sensitivity to the light, speed of the shutter movement, no. So sometimes this is very good answer he has prepared. So that confusion is there. If you're not very clear about the concept, they will ask the same thing in a beating around the bush manner. They will never ask, normally they never ask very straight way forward. This is my observation in past couple of years. So same idea how they can rotate that in a different manner. So lower ASA or ISO number means the film is more sensitive to light? No, less sensitive. So if the film is a 50 ASA, it is a less sensitive to light. If it is a 200 ASA, more sensitive, 400 more sensitive. Faster, lower film is not called a faster film. A faster film is film which is a 400 ASA, 800 ASA. Always color film? No, it can be black and white also. Very good answer. So question answer is B. Okay. This is the correct answer is B. Which ISO is best suited for bright outdoor shooting? Again, very indirect way of asking. For a bright outdoor shooting means fine grain film is required, which means around 50 ASA, 100 ASA. So among these 400, 800, 16,200, we are going to the fine grain film, which is 100 ASA. This is A is the correct answer. So high speed film has finer grain? No. Poor light performance? No. Higher ISO rating? Yes. Lower contrast? No, it will be high contrast. High speed film is one of the problem with high speed film is that the contrast is it become more high if you take a photograph with a high speed film. And if you take the same photograph, this could be a very good question. If you take the same photograph with the 2 different films under the same light condition having the correct exposure in both the images, which will have a more contrast. More contrast would be in a film which is having a higher speed. So higher speed film give you a higher contrast. So that is an offshoot of this question, which I've just told you. Let me just also write down because I'll include that. Okay, to AC. Okay. So, which of the following film speed is considered slow? So, as we discussed yesterday, the one which is a fine grain film, so 100 is a slow one comparative to 800, and 800 is a slow film comparative to 1600. That's another thing. If you compare between two film, which is a slower, it is relative to. So 100 ASA is a slower film compared to 400 film. But 400 film is compared to 800 is a slow film. And 800 is a slow film compared to 1600. But in general language, if you will say which is a slow film, which is having a finer grain, which means 50 ASA, 100 ASA. Earlier there used to be a film called 64 ASA also. So, what ASA standard for the film terminology, as you say, American Standard Association, Advanced Sensitivity Adjustment, Automatic Shutter Association, Aperture Speed Adjustment? No. So, you should know sometime abbreviations are being asked in the past. So, American Standard Association is correct answer. Which film speed would be the best for night shoot without additional lighting? Very good question. Which means in a night shoot, you need additional light to boost up certain level of the lighting. But here, he has mentioned very categorically, you don't need additional light. So what you need to do is, you need a high speed film, which is 1600 in this particular case. So this is the correct answer is C. So you can imagine how the question is being formulated. Is around the same thing. Basic idea is that, and the application of that of different situation, he is inquiring that thing. Faster film speed tends to have now four options. Smoother tonal transition? No. Smoother will be in the slow speed, 100 ASA or something like less grain. No, less grain means slow speed. More visible grain? Yes. That is one of the problem with the high speed film. It become more grainy. When Kodak introduced the T grain technology in the negative, it has a very special grain structure which reduce the grainy part of the high speed film. High speed film has the biggest problem was the grain. So Kodak came out with the T grain technology, which was also replicated by Fuji and other people, but they were the pioneers. So grain is the biggest problem, and outcome of the grain is also sometime contrast. I will also mention one particular question where if you overexpose, uh, okay, when the question will come, we will discuss, not now. In digital camera, ISO is a mechanical setting, a setting for white balance, no. A electronic amplification of light sensitivity, a lens-based adjustment. So again, I will repeat this question to understand. In digital camera, he is not talking about the mechanical cameras, the DSLR cameras in which you will put your negative. He's talking about the cameras which is digital. So in digital, everything is basically electronically done, more or less inside the camera. If you look into it, most of the things are electronic. Few physical parts are there in terms of where the physical thing Okay, can you see the screen? Can you see the screen of this question paper?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
We're going back again. So we were talking about the digital camera. So in digital, everything, there is no physical change of the film. So how does the ISO keep increasing and decreasing? Through the amplification of the light sensitivity. So it's a little technical question, but could be asked. When using a high ISO film, let's say 1600, the image may appear cleaner or more detailed. No. Soft with shallow depth of field. Depth of field has nothing to do with the film speed. Remember. So he is trying to confuse you by soft and shallow depth of field. No. Depth of field has nothing to do with the film speed. Will it be grainy? Yes. Underexposed? No. Exposure, if our exposure is correct, how it can be underexposed? No. So even if the film is 1600, it will be a grainy thing. Which combination would result in an overexposure on ISO 400 film in a daylight? Very good question. Please try to understand it. It's very simple also, but you need to understand. Now, when he's saying 400 film in a daylight, okay, normally what you do in a daylight, you use the 100 ASA film, okay, and apply your common sense now. F16 you use in a bright sunlight, yes, okay. Normally it is a 100 ASA film, normally, and F1600 ASA film is there, for example, okay. So what is the shutter speed? Let's say, for example, if I shoot at a 1 by 1/25th of a second, for example, this is my correct uh, correct exposure. But if I keep increasing, my film speed is fixed. What I'm doing here is F16 1 by 250th of a second, F4 1 by 1000th of a second, F4 1 by 250th of a second, F8 by 1000th of a second. So when the overexposure would happen, overexposure would happen when the you need to think what is going to be the this is a tricky question to explain, but I'll explain to you. Have some patience. Let's say, for example, my shutter speed is, my film is 400 ASA, and if I shoot at f16, for example, and my shutter speed is by 1 by 250th of a second, okay, this is a one combination. Now from f16 I move to the f4, which means what I have done is I have opened up the aperture. How many stops? 11, 8, 5.6 and 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4 stop I have opened up in case of f4. Is it clear? And what I have done is from 1 by 1/20th of a second, I have cut down the light by how much? 2/50th of a second, 1 by 500th of a second, 1 by 1000th of it. So here I have, what I have done is I have cut down the 3 stop. So there I have opened up 4 stop, and here I have cut down the 3 stop. So what actually I have done is I have opened up 1 stop. So in option number A, I have opened the exposure by 1 stop. Clear to everybody? Now I'll go to the option number 2. F4, if I am shooting, for example, if I have cut down from f4 to shutter speed by 1000, okay, if I cut this, we have already considered. Now option number C, if I f4 and I go by 120, 1 by 250th of a second, so it means the exposure would remain same. Clear to everybody? And if I go to the f4, f8 and 1 by 16th, again what I'm doing is when I'm going to f8, there is 4 to 5.6, then I'm 8. Basically, I am cutting down 2 stop cut down. And if the shutter speed is 1 by 1000, then what I've done is 500 1000, then I have cut down the 2. Clear to everybody that how the adjustment is happening in terms of the exposure. This is a, we have a 3 parameters in which either we move the shutter speed, or we move the ASA, or we move the aperture. By it is like I put my 200 rupees in this pocket. From this pocket I take out the 100 rupees. So how much rupees I am left with? 100. Is it clear? So if I have a 3 pocket, in one pocket I put the 1000 rupees, another pocket I put 500 rupees, but from third pocket I take out the 200 rupees. So out of 1500 I have taken out the 200. So I'm left with a 1300. We will explain this question little more detail when we will have a couple of more parameters. I will prepare some more questions. I will just mark this question red if I can, so that you will understand this question better. It's a tricky question. Something like this would come because, because it needs some calculation and understanding of exposure. How much exposure compensation you are giving, whether you are opening up or you are cutting it down. There are two ways only. What is the equivalence of ASA 400 in ISO? Obviously, it will be the same. Only ASA will be replaced by ISO. There is no conversion of the number. Number remains same. So we call it as a ISO or ASO is the same thing. What type of film speed is preferred for the studio lit cinematography? Very, very important thing. This question will not be available, applicable now. But let's say, for example, if you are living 20 years back or 10 years back when the motion picture film was there. So inside the studio, when you're shooting, normally either you shoot sometime high speed. For example, there is a slow motion. So we will talk about the slow motion in more detail. Why high speed film is required for slow motion. Otherwise, too much of a light will be required to boost the lighting. So what we do is we shoot at a speed which is not slow also and which is not very higher. So in between kind of a speed we choose. So here you could see that he has mentioned ISO 500 T. T stands for tungsten because inside the studio you are shooting with the tungsten light. More or less 90% of the time you also use the HMI, which is a daylight, but 90% of the time you use the tungsten light. So moderate, neither 100, not 1600 and 3000, roughly around 500 would be an ideal speed for shooting the normal shots as well as some of the shots which are high speed shots. Otherwise, what we do is we use a different magazine. When we have to shoot a very, very high speed and you don't have enough lights to boost up the light level, so you use the very high speed, but very rarely. We prefer to boost up the light level rather than to use the high speed. This is a little experienced question. Not everybody can answer, but if you apply your common sense, but this question is also not valid in a current scenario. But as FTI is being trained on the picture negative era, so even if they want to give you a tough time, they can ask question like this. So I'm just preparing you because they will say one line. There is no syllabus as such. If they says history of filmmaking, history of photography. So history of photography means picture negative. Picture negative means you need to understand what picture negative days, what it used to be. So vision is a kind of a stock Kodak introduced. This is a very interesting question. A film with a ISO 50 is best described as high speed, no. Medium speed, no. Ultra sensitive, no. Slow speed. So these are the various terms people have used to confuse you. Sometimes people get confused. So you have to read the question very carefully and then answer. The trick lies in the question. Even if you have a very wonderful knowledge about the film speed and other thing, you have to read the question carefully. Read it twice, understand it, and then do it. Which of these film speed would give the finest grain in an image? Obviously, slow speed. So slow speed among these four is 800 or sorry 100. So our correct answer is C. If you change film from ISO 100 to ISO 400, how many stops of light you are going to gain? Very, very simple, but at the same time, you have to have an under. So normally what we do is 100 to 200, 200 to 400. In today's time, this is one of the difference in digital camera and DSLR camera. Okay. When the difference of DSLR versus digital we will discuss. Today we can increase in terms of small increment. 100, 125, 150, 175, 200. Small increment of the film speed we can give. But earlier days, it was either 100, 200 ASA, 400 ASA or 800 ASA for the normal still photography. For cinematography, high speed film like 1600 were also existing. So from 100 to 200, 200 to 400, even if it is a digital camera or it is a DSLR, SLR camera, he is not talking about the camera, he is talking about the film. So whatever format you are choosing, from 100 to 400, 100 means to 200, 200 means to 400. Now my question over here, which I have not mentioned here, is it a exponential growth? Is it a logarithmic growth? Or is it a linear growth? Shall I repeat my question? 22 people, 21 people who are here.
Sir, it's linear growth.
Okay, next.
Sir, can you please repeat, sir?
Okay. This growth in the ISO is exponential or logarithmic or linear. Among these three, what it is?
Sir, it's exponential.
Yes, sir, it's
Exponential.
exponential.
Okay, anybody else? So you have not studied the mathematics properly. This is logarithmic. It's a very tricky question, very difficult question also. If your basic or fundamental of the mathematics is not clear, you will not be able to answer it. It is a logarithmic. Go and find out how tomorrow. So 100 or 200. One stop here, one stop there. So 100, 200, 400. Okay. What does exposure latitude means in relation to film speed? This is, we will talk about this in little more detail over there. So normally exposure latitude is the film's ability to resolve sharp detail. No, that is called resolution. The angle at which light hits the film. No, it has nothing to do with it. The range of exposure level a film can tolerate. Tolerate matlab, suppose I shoot 5 stop overexpose. Will I see the detail in the photograph? If I see still the detail, it means it has a this much latitude. If I shoot 6 stop or 7 stop overexpose, will I still be able to see some detail? So is the range towards the overexposure side as well as toward the underexposure side in which you will still be able to get the details. So exposure latitude, today most of the cameras they play around this. We have a 14 stop exposure latitude. Somebody say we have 18 stop exposure latitude. So this latitude question is a very important question for photography as well as for cinematography. So it's the range of exposure level a film can tolerate. Tolerate means it is not that you're going to be under some torture or something like that. It is a detail you can get in the shadow as well as highlight area. That is the meaning of tolerating. Okay. And the depth of field available in the shot, it has nothing to do with that because it is in front of the that is a different thing which we have already discussed yesterday, the depth of field thing. Here it has to do with the range of exposure. Usable image, they have used the word usable image he has written, but actually it is a detail in the highlight as well as shadow area. In a technical term, it is a detail in the highlight area, but here we have used the layman's language. So what is the primary disadvantage of using high speed film in a daylight? High speed film is supposed to be used in the low light condition. So if you're going to use the highlight, you can use it because the 400 SA, I can use it. Nobody can stop me. So 400 SA film, for example, if I'm going to use in a daylight, a more saturated colors, no. Greater dynamic range, it has nothing to do with it. Excess grain, yes. That is the inherent property of a high speed film. Whether I use it in a daylight or whether I use it in a low light. Low light means basically a tungsten light. Tungsten light is a low light conditions, but even in a low light, you will hardly get a exposure of f16 if you are using the baby multi solar and those kind of a light. So very tricky question in a day. He is indirectly asking basically, okay, property of a high speed film. Whether you use in daylight, if I change the same question to another situation, what is the primary disadvantage of using a high speed film in tungsten light? Answer would still will be the same. It's just confusing the student. Remember, there are two agendas of an examiner in a MCQ. First agenda is to gain your technical understanding. Okay. And there is a second hidden agenda, which is to confuse you. To confuse you. This is a trick a teacher plays to confuse you. So this is a very confusing question. How does it matter whether I use in daylight or tungsten light? Only problem will be using a filter. If the film is tungsten balance or daylight balance, but here he is not talking about that. He's just talking about the ASA of the film. Okay. So interesting question. Remember it. The sensitivity of film stock is decided at. Now this is again a history of negative question. The sensitivity of a stock is decided at the time of manufacturing. It is not decided at the time of processing, time of shooting, time of projection. No, it is decided at the time of manufacturing. Now those people who understand a bit of picture negative days of shooting, there is something called pushing and pulling of uh, at the time of processing, which means if my film is a 100 ASA film, I can rate at 400 ASA at the time of shooting. So what I've done is I have two stop underexpose. A 100 ASA film I shoot at 200 ASA, it will be one stop. If I shoot at 400 ASA, it will be two stop. So two stop underexposed I have done at the time of shooting consciously, knowing it fully well. So how I can compensate that in the time of processing? You overdevelop it. There is a certain method by, we will also discuss the developing thing in connection with the black and white only, so that you understand earlier days how the negative was used and how the image will formulate. That's a very important thing for you to understand. So basically in the time of processing, we either push or pull. So speed cannot be changed, though you are very consciously using it at a 400 ASA or maybe at 800 ASA. Sometime I have experimented 100 ASA film to be underexposed 3 times. 100 was for 800 ASA for some dance performance where the light condition was very bad. I have experimented 100 ASA to be rated at 800 and overdeveloped at the time of processing color films as well as black and white both. But there are disadvantages, so we will not discuss that because it's just a history. You need to remember question which can be asked in a examination. That is our basic agenda. Not to make you more knowledgeable, but to understand the agenda. Which ISO is most likely to introduce digital noise in a low light condition? This digital noise business you need to understand. When you see a video camera, okay, there is a button called gain, gain of one stop, gain of two stop. So if you switch on that gain button and if you see the image, it becomes, there's a term called boiling. Boiling is small dot will small blinking. If you look at that black and white image or nowadays color image, this screen will start boiling, which means they will blink. So that is called boiling. So the boiling thing will start happening in a video image if you use a gain of two stop, three stop, four stop. So normally people don't shoot more than one stop. Earlier days. Today technology is very advanced, so you don't need that gain business. But what actually happen in a gain? It is a noise level, because it is not this noise, audio noise, this is digital noise, which in a low light condition become visible. So his question is, which ISO setting is most likely to introduce digital noise in a low light condition? Obviously, whenever you're going to use a high speed, which means higher ISO, it will give you a digital noise, which means a grainy image in a common man's language, grain image, but he is using a very, very technical term called digital noise. So obviously in the high speed film, which means higher ISO. Film speed is measured by shutter angle, lens diameter, ISO, ASA, aperture number. Okay. So these are the four ways you can measure the light. Now, question is, film speed is measured by among these. So we are talking about ASC and ISO so far. So he has given you various other options to confuse you, but if you know for sure, answer is very, very clear. Hanji. Number 23. ISO rating of a film indicates what? Grain size, speed of a camera loading, no. Light sensitivity, yes. Frame rate, no. But it's a very good question to confuse you. If you do not understand the ISO, then you get confused. So here the basic idea is to understand your technicality. Do you know what ISO is all about? And he has given you a couple of options. Okay. So ISO is standardized under organization name. Everybody knows this. International Organization for Standardization. IS. An ISO 800 film will expose properly. Very different way of asking the question. ISO 800 means it is a high speed film. High speed film means low light. In a low light, it is required. Okay. So in a bright light, if you use it, you can use it, but then you have to cut down the exposure because it is already a very sensitive film. So when the light condition is very dim, you will be using the higher ISO, which is 800. Only fluorescent light, direct sunlight, fluorescent light. Now, there can be a confusion between fluorescent light and dim light. Now, if the examiner would have sent fluorescent light, okay, then you could, then both are correct. Then it would become MSQ, which is not going to be asked now because MSQ is being deleted. So answer has to be one only. So if this question would have been MSQ and he would have sent dim light, fluorescent light, yes, both are correct. But he has said only fluorescent light. No, I can use anywhere I feel like. So this is wrong light. So general condition is dim lighting. In a dim lighting, I can use the ISO 800 film. See, this pattern is to explain you how the same concept can be rotated and beating around the bush. We call it as a beating around the bush in the manner. Rather than asking directly, he is asking indirectly the fundamental concept. Are you clear about them or not? Okay. So in a bright daylight, high speed film might cause underexposure, sharpness, overexposure, and clean color. So normally, let's say, for example, if you are shooting at a FC outdoor, when you shoot in a bright sunlight, already your exposure is f16, right? So, but if your exposure overshoot, let's say for example 32, so what you're going to do, you will use the ND filters. We will talk about the ND filters later on, but here it is more or less similar situation that the light condition is so high because you are not using 100 ASA, but you're going to use the 400 ASA. So he is saying that if you are going to use, let's say for example, high speed film, so film would be overexposed or underexposed or clean colors. Color, it has nothing to do with color. Color in the sense, if you correctly expose, then obviously color will be correctly reproduced. But if you overexpose, color will be fade out. If you underexpose, color will be somewhat saturated to half stop and one stop. After that, there will be a shift of the color. So this question is a very, very clear understanding that in a bright daylight, normally you use the 100 ASA film. But if you use the high speed film, it will get the overexposure because you already have the 2 stop or 3 stop of the sensitivity in your film itself. Okay. So you need to cut down the aperture, but aperture sometimes you can't cut down because f16 is the highest aperture in some of the cameras, some of the lenses. Very few lenses has the 32 as a aperture. Very few. Normally it is around 16. So what you will do? You have to, if you don't have a ND filter, then your film will be overexposed. So it's a very intelligent question. Not everybody can answer if until unless you apply your mind. Okay. So another way of asking tripod, use of a tripod. Which ISO film will most likely require tripod in a low light? For a still photography, if you are shooting, if you are using a handheld camera, and if your shutter speed is slow, which means let's say 1 by 30th of a second, the image will be blurred. Okay. So to capture the image a bit better, what you do is you use the tripod. One of the purpose of tripod is in a slow shutter speed to have a proper shot where the hand movement will not add any kind of blur. What you do is you use the tripod. So indirectly he is asking which ISO film most likely require a tripod in a low light, which means which is having a slow shutter speed, film speed. Because if your film is high speed, you are not bothered about it because you will get the enough shutter speed 1 by 250th of a second or maybe 125th. But if the condition is low, say for example a dance performance on the stage, then the shutter speed you are getting 130th only because the condition is very low. So what you do is you also use the tripod. So it's a very indirect way of asking the same thing, that if you are using a 100 ASA film and if the light condition is low, will you use the tripod? Yes. So this is indirectly he's asking a question. This pushed film which I was talking about, underexposed at the time of shoot and overdeveloped at the time of processing. Okay. So shooting a lower speed film at a higher ISO. So if my film is 100 ASA, I can shoot up to 400. I mean, nobody can stop me to shoot by 800, but then the detail will be missing because it will be 200 is one stop, 400 is two stop, 800 is three stop. Three stop underexposed film cannot be pushed to that level at the time of processing by overdevelopment. So normally up to that much. What is the drawback of pushing a film? Because you have not used it, so you may not be able to understand. But in general, this is the basic problem. Whenever you do the overdevelopment of a film, any kind of negative, whether it's black and white or color, when you overdevelop it higher, okay, two things happen: contrast and grain. When the picture will become grainy as well as the photograph will become more contrasty. Digital ISO setting mimic. This mimic means not that mimicry kind of thing, but it is more or less the idea is the same. So basically, it replaces your sensitivity. Instead of saying a sensitive of the film, here we say digital ISO is sensitive. ASA is what basically is the sensitivity of the film. So whether it is a digital or whether it is a grain technology, it remains about the sensitivity of the film. Instead of a film, now here it is a electronic sensor. So answer is sensitivity of the film is C. Now you can think how many ways variety of question can be thought just on the ISO itself. We have not entered in the shutter speed domain. We have not entered into the aperture domain so far. I'm just entering only the one domain. So a ISO 100 film will need how much more light than ISO 400? Suppose if you're shooting inside a studio and you need to shoot something, so if the film is ISO and you don't have a 400 ASA film, but to get the same exposure, you check the latitude of the stop 100, 200, 400. So there is a two stop differences there. 100 ASA film is two stop more less sensitive than the 400. So answer is basically 4 times. Why? 100 foot can now try to understand this. 100 ASA, an ISO film 100 will need how much more light than ISO 400? So stop is 100, 200, 200 become 400. Okay. 100-foot candle light, 200-foot candle light, and 400-foot candle light. So what is the difference between 100-foot candle and 400-foot candle in numerical values? It has become 4 times 100 rupees and 400 rupees. 4 times more, right? So this is a numerical calculation. Times. He is asking the times. It's a very tricky answer. This is. It's a very, very tricky answer. When I was reading it, I also thought whether it is a twice or it is a 4 times. So correct answer is actually 4 times. Why? Because you need 4, if a correct exposure at a 100 ASA film, 400 ASA film is, let's say for example, 100-foot candle. So cut down 50 and then 25 because your film is more sensitive for the 400 ASA. So you need less light for the 400 ASA. So an ISO 100 film will need how much more light than the 400 ASA because the ISO is less. So I need more light to get the correct exposure, which means how many times? 4 times. 400-foot candle would be required. If you cut down the intensity wise, if you look into it, what actually happen when you shoot a photograph, let's say for example f4. Okay, if I'm taking a photograph, rest of the setting remains same. If I'm shooting a photograph at aperture f4, if I cut down from f4 to f2.8, oh sorry, open up to 2.8, what I've done is I have doubled the amount of light. So if 100-foot candle light was falling, now the 200-foot candle light is coming. Okay, when I cut down from 2.8 to f1.4, what I have done is I have opened up the aperture 2 times. So which means earlier it was 200-foot candle of light was coming. Now it is 400-foot candle of light is coming. So how many times amount of light has increased? 4 times. Clear to everybody? It's a very tricky question and a very important question. Look very simple, but it is tricky. Are you able to understand why it is 4 times, why it is not twice? Because normally it is 100 to 200, 200 to 400. It look like 2 stop. If it would be a stop, then it is 2. But if it is times, then it is 4. Which of the following is least ideal for night scene? Night scene में क्या होता है? Condition, light condition is very low. So if the light condition is very low and if you are taking a 100 ASA film, then it is not suitable because it is suitable for daylight when you have enough light to get the correct exposure. So high speed film is required for the night scene. Indirectly, he is asking that. Fast film stocks are generally ISO 50 to 100, no. 1600 plus, yes. 25, no. 80, no. So any stock could be, which is the high, even if it could be 800 plus is also high speed, 1600 plus is also high speed. Even to me, I would say if there would have been an answer 400 plus, even then it would be a high speed stock comparative to rest of the footage. Okay, rest of the ISA, because 50, 25 is slow speed. Changing from 800 ASA to 100 ASA reduces light sensitivity by, read the question carefully. Here he is talking about stops. So from 800 to 400, one stop, 400 to 200, 200. Answer is 3 stop. Lower ISO film produces, which means fine grain. So fine grain film, he is saying what is the property of a fine grain film? Indirectly he is asking that. So more noise, no. Finer detail and less grain, yes. Less resolution, no. It is a very high resolution photograph, only then you will get that fine grain. Faster motion, nothing to do with it. So basically finer detail and less grain, any film which is a fine grain film. Slow essay. So it's a property. indirectly he has asked the property of a 100 ASA film or a slower film. They are the fine grain films. Which film speed is most versatile for variable light condition is another tricky question. Why do you need a zoom lens? So that you don't have to change the lenses again and again. Mainly, okay? So if the light condition is fluctuating, then you need the film which can accommodate the brightest one as well as the little darker area. So which means 50SA is a slow film. No, I don't need that. ISO 100 is good for a bright sunny day. ISO 25, no, it is good for a very bright sunny day. And 400 is the film which is a bit higher speed, but at the same time I can still use it by using ND filter outdoor if the light condition is too high. Okay, so it is the only ASA which can adjust both the situation where you need a little. Suppose the day is cloudy. In a cloudy day, it has become light has become less. So f16 aperture you may not get. You may get only, let's say for example f8, but for some reason you still want to shoot at f16, so you need a film which is a high speed film, which means 400. So 400 is correct answer here. Variable light condition का मतलब यही है, suppose you are shooting in a bright sunny day today and after 2 hours it's rain and then the light, or before rain it become cloudy. So if it become cloudy, what I'm going to do is I will use a little, I need a little higher aperture for some reason. Light condition is not good. So what I'm going to do is I will use the high speed film. Using ISO 100 film indoor without light may result. Is another tricky question. If you do not have a additional light, for example, and if you are using a 100 ASA film, so what will happen? It will become a underexpose because you need to boost up the light level. For example, if my face is not getting enough light, yesterday there was a small light, somebody has taken it for a shoot. So if I switch on that light, my boosting of the light level on my face will be higher. Some of you, if you look at your faces, sometimes it is dark. Why? Because you are not using a additional light in front of your face. Just give me a moment. हाँ जी. So we are back now. Okay, so using ISO 100 film indoor. Okay, so using 100 ASA film indoor without light may result in a underexpose because light may not be sufficient, and 100 ASA film is required in a outdoor. So anything which is required in outdoor and we are using it in an indoor, so what would happen is it will give you the underexposed image. is the understanding of light. This is a question which has nothing to do with the too much of technicalities. In between that adjustment of exposure by shutter speed and film speed by calculating IS stop is a technical question. But here it is an understanding of the speed of a film. What happens to depth of field when using a faster film? Faster film, do you think that it is connected with the depth of field? We had discussed yesterday, depth of field depend upon the focal length, it depends upon the distance, and the third factor, it depends upon the aperture. So always increases. Try to understand the question, what happens to depth of field when using a faster film? Always increase, always decrease, depends on aperture and lens, no effect. As we had discussed yesterday, it has depend upon the two factor, basically three factor, but here the two are being mentioned. So indirectly they are connecting the depth of field with the film, which they can just to make you confused. This is just to confuse you, nothing more than that. In general, what kind of lighting setup require higher ISO film? Whenever there is a very low light, you need to boost up the light level, which means in a low light conditions, you need to do the lighting. So low key interior, please try to understand the meaning of this low key. There are two terms which are used in the lighting. A very, very important thing from here, an offshoot which I wanted to tell you is that discuss the lighting of a scene from any film. It can be asked a question, discuss the lighting of any scene from any film which you have seen recently, which is about high key lighting. Okay. So high key means which is very happiness, birthday is there, some party is going on, that we call it as a high key. Now when we talk about the low key lighting, a lighting which is very low light, brighter areas are not there. Most of the time it is darker areas. So as an exercise, you need to find a film for yourself and try to understand the lighting over there. We will also discuss some scene from any film in the future during the class. But for the time being, I'm just telling you the low key means a depressed atmosphere where the brighter areas are not there, darker areas are there. Okay. Like in a jungle, if you go in a moonlit day, it is a low key lighting. But if in an outdoor, in any landscape or picnic spot or whatever is there in outdoor, it is a high key. So answer is basically low key. Low key means where the light level is very low, you need a high speed lighting. High speed film, sorry. ISO 400 is how many stop faster than 100? 200, 1 stop, 400, 2 stop. So correct answer is B. Which would produce the smoothest skin tone in portrait? Obviously, he is asking for the fine grain film which you are going to use. Here the fine grain film is 100 ASA. Which ISO rating would most likely blow out highlight in detail? Try to understand this question, very tricky. Suppose, let's say, for example, in a house, there is a curtain which is lit from outside sunlight. Okay. Inside is a darker area lit from the bulb or something else, but outdoor patch of light is falling on the curtain. So what is going to happen? Question is, which ISO rating would most likely blow out the highlight in the daylight? Which means if I'm shooting inside a portrait and if there is a curtain like that kind of a thing, and if I'm using, let's say, for example, a 100 ASA film normally, it will be still fine because enough light is there. Okay. But if I use the 50 ASA, it is still fine. Up to 200 ASA, it is still fine. But if I use more sensitive area light, let's say 800, the details would go out because already it was overexposed earlier also. So overexposed thing, again, you are opening up your sensitivity by, in comparison to 100 ASA, 200 ASA, 400 ASA, 800 ASA, depend upon which film you are using, 2 stop, 3 stop. So it will become 2 stop overlight, overexposed, or 3 stop overexposed. And obviously after a point, there's another term called bleach out. Here it is being used the blowout. Another equivalent term is called bleach out. Bleach out means all the lights would be, highlight area, details in the highlight area will be not visible in the photograph or motion picture. So higher the shutter speed you have, higher the ASA you have, it is not required because 100 ASA would have been enough. Bit tricky, but if you understand the things, it's not a problem. The benefit of low ISO film is, why do you use the low ISO film? Because of the grain, fine grain technology, because the image quality is much smoother when you use the fine grain film. So primary area is basically to get the finer area, minimum grain. Which term directly, which term relates directly to film speed? अब देखो यहां पे थोड़ा कंफ्यूजन कर दिया है उसने. Kelvin is a color temperature. When you measure color temperature, lux is a foot candle, is a unit of the foot candle. How many light, when you measure the light, unit of the light measurement is lux. Foot candle is also 100 foot candle, 200 foot candle. Lux is also measurement of the light. So it's a to measure the light. ISO is the way we calculate the, we define the speed. Foot candle is for the light quantity. So we will also discuss some physical characteristics and some other characteristics of the light in some other lecture. So it's a bit technical, but if you don't understand, you will mess it out. Film speed affect what? Frame rate? No, that is the camera. I will decide 24 or 48 frame. Depth of field? No. Light sensitivity? Yes, it is always connected. See, all these permutation combinations are being given to you so that you do not become confused. Remain focused that film speed has to do with this. And how they can confuse you, these are the various permutations and possible combinations. Grain structure of fast film will be grainy, obviously, and coarse and visible. So that easily you can see it, that it is boiling kind of a thing is there in a photograph if you see with high speed film, any photograph taken. IS and ISO ratings are incompatible, different system, the same numerically based in a frame rate. So if a 100 ASA film or 100 ISO film is there, it remains the same. So our correct answer is C. The term pulling film, which I have told you, push and pull, is the opposite of pull. So using film after expiry, it has nothing to do with that. Using a high speed film at a lower ASA, which means if you have a 800 ASA film and you are rating while shooting as a 100, it means you are pulling the film. It's connected with the history of earlier days, but I have just included in case some mad guy puts question like this. Pulling ISO 100 film to 200 will likely result in what you're doing now. You are again bringing it down. So same thing, overexposure, you are doing it. Instead of using a 100 ASA film, you are using it as a 200 ASA. You are overexposing. Earlier I said lower ASA rated at higher was used for the low light condition like a stage photography. When the dancer is there or some musician is there, here it is a other way around. Normally we don't do that. Normally we don't do that, but if you are left with no stock and you have no choice, so you do like that. Digital sensor mimic film speed through, again I have told you the same thing, is a gain. The term is called gain, sensor gain. That's how they boost up the various film speed in the digital cameras. Which ISO rating is typically used for daylight balance color negative films? So as D stand for daylight and T stand for tungsten. These numerical over there, what does it mean is there are two kind of films are being made earlier. Now those two kind of films are not being made. That's why even in your digital system, you have to decide whether you wanted to have a daylight or tungsten light, where they technically mention you that the color temperature of 3200 degree or the color temperature of 5500 degree. This is one of the very, very rare improvisation in the digital camera that you can use in between change. Suppose I wanted to shoot at a 300 degree color temperature, I can do that. If I want 2800, I can do that. But earlier, you cannot do that. You can do earlier, but there was a very complicated mechanism by choosing some color correction filters and using them. Very rarely the people would do it. but normally people will not. So here it is much easier. This is one of the major difference. This question is a very, very probable, that what is the difference between a SLR camera and a DSLR camera. So this is one of the major difference. It's very easy to change little bit of warmth I want, little bit of bluish tinge I want. I can change little bit of ISO setting and I can get that tinge. Higher ISO image in digital can be clean. A very typical question, because sometimes you shoot and later on you need to reduce the grains. So technology is so helpful. Then you can, there's a technology called noise reduction technology. Many of the still cameras, they uses it, so that when you're using the high speed setting, the noise will not be there. Why? Because there's a technology called noise reduction. So noise reduction technology will help you to clean the image. You can clean later on also, and you can also clean at the time of shooting. Film speed does not directly affect grain. It do more sensitive film, more grainy. Light sensitivity, yes, it is all about the light sensitivity. Shutter speed, it has nothing to do with that. Focal length. Now, try to understand this question. Film speed does not directly affect focal length. It affects graininess, it affects sensitivity, it affects shutter speed. Why? Because by changing the shutter speed, you can change the exposure. If I'm shooting at 1 by 125th and I move to 250th of a second, what I'm doing is I'm changing the exposure. So the moment I am changing the exposure, I am affecting the overall exposure. Okay. But if I'm changing the focal length, 100 mm to 200 mm to 500 mm, the image size would change. The magnification, very, very important question. Please mark it. The image size will change when I'm changing the focal length. Okay. Which statement is true? 800 film is finer than 100 ASA. 800, which statement is true? False or true? Please try to understand. 800 film is finer than 100 ASA? No. 400 film is faster than 100? Yes. 1600 require more light than ISO 400? No. That's why you use high speed when the light is not there. ISO does not affect grain, it do. So correct answer is B. Same thing in a different manner. How the same thing can be twisted? How the same thing can be made more confusing? Film speed is rated assuming exposure is made with artificial light, daylight, mid-gray tone, color filter applied. Now this is a difficult question. This is a difficult question. If you do not understand this gray chart business, then you will not be able to answer it. So we will discuss this gray chart in a detail so that you understand the exposure more correctly. So all the meter built in inside the DSLR camera or SLR cameras, they are graded with the 18% gray chart, which means 18% gray chart. If you take an incident reading, suppose incident reading it 100-foot candle, and if you measure the spotlight, the reading would be the same. So gray chart where the incident and incident reading as well as the spot reading are the same. That become the calibration point for all the cameras for exposure. So we'll discuss it in more detail, this 18% gray chart. Color filter applied? No, it has nothing to do with that. So this is a tricky question, 61. Okay. Shooting ISO 400 film outdoor with ND filter primarily. So what you're doing is, now I have here the use of ND filter. I discussed earlier also, if you remember, that if you have a no choice and you got a 1600 ASA film, or here they have mentioned 400 ASA film, and if you're shooting outdoor, what would happen? Because your sensitivity is very high. Okay. So you are going to overexposure would be there. So to cut down that overexposure, you will use the ND filter. We will discuss the ND filter, ND3, ND6, ND9. So to cut down the two-stop, you will use the ND6, which will cut down the two-stop exposure. So it reduces to avoid the exposure. It says that it helps avoid exposure, because if you do, there's another way. If your lens has a aperture of 32, for example, so instead of f16 you can go to 32. One stop you can compensate over there by cutting down the exposure. That is the one way. Another way is by cut down the shutter speed. That's another way. Okay, but in motion picture you can't touch the shutter speed. Normally it is fixed 1/48th of a second normally. So only way is the ND filter. Only way is the ND filter. But for still photography, yes, you can change the shutter speed and control your exposure. A slower film requires less light, faster shutter speed. See, shutter speed can be slow, faster. It has nothing to do with it. Slower the film, more light would be required. That's why we shoot it in an outdoor situation. You don't shoot with a 25 ASA or 100 ASA or 50 ASA inside the studio. So a slower film requires less light, faster shutter speed, more light, more noise. So correct answer is more light, because the film is slow. Which of the following does not change when switching film speed? If you are switching film speed from 100 ASA to 200 ASA, sensitivity to light, shutter angle, grain and latitude. Now there is one more term is being introduced called shutter angle. From where this shutter angle has come? In a motion picture camera, the shutter rotates. Okay, is a rotating shutter. In a still photography, if you notice, it is a parallel movement from vertical to below or maybe left to right. But in a motion picture, the shutter is rotating shutter. So this is about the motion picture cameras. Which of the following does not change when switching film speed? Suppose I loaded my 100 ASA. Now I change for the 400 ASA for the next shot. So obviously, if I am using a 400 ASA film, sensitivity of the film will change. Yes. Grain will change. Yes. Latitude will also change, because every film has a different latitude. But shutter angle will not change, because it is fixed in the camera until or unless you want to change. And very rarely we change the shutter angle. I will discuss that also later to you, because there is an angle of the shutter which you can change over there. Which factor does not directly impact image exposure? Aperture do? Yes. Shutter speed will also change. ISO? Yes. Frame size? No. It has nothing to do with. Frame size has to do with the magnification of a lens, which is focal length. So if the question is not of the focal length, it does not matter. Higher ISO film stock gives more detail? No. Resolution? No, it is less resolution of the images, resolution of the picture. See, always there is a resolution of the negative, resolution of the paper. Both the resolutions are there. People always think actually three things. One is the lens. Resolution is connected with the lens. Resolution is connected with the negative. Resolution is connected with the paper on which the print is being made, a photograph is being made. So resolution is connected with the three different parameters. When we talk about the resolution, I'll discuss with it. So here, details, higher ISO, detail, give more details. Of course, because it is a shadow area, it will capture the detail in the shadow area also. Resolution, light sensitivity, and color accuracy. Most important thing is higher. I think there is a problem in this question. That's why I wanted to check. Let me just check again. Higher ISO's film stock will give more light sensitivity. It's correct. See, because somebody else has prepared it for me, so I cannot rely, and that's why I have not sent it to you till I cross check everything. Okay, so higher ISO film stock gives more detail. No. Resolution, no. It, on the contrary, it gives the less resolution. Light sensitivity, yes. Color accuracy, also not. If you very carefully notice a photograph, shot with a higher ISO film, color saturation, accuracy, not saturation, not the color, correct, correctly reproduced colors are not there. It moves little bit here and there. So exact colors are not there if you are shooting with a high color, high sensitivity of the film. So that is one of the reason why we avoid going 800 ASA or 1600 ASA, because the color accuracy is missing. ISO digital noise is caused by, I told you, sensor amplification. This is a technical term you have to remember. That's why I just gave the three answer alternative there. I could not thought of the fourth one. Lens distortion, it has nothing to do. Color grading has nothing to do. Color grading is being done at the end. When edit is being done, then the color grader comes. We call it a colorist or grader. Right now, it has nothing to do with it. So ISO 250 is how many stops slower than 1000? Again, the same calculation, 250 to 500, 500 to 1000. So correct answer is 2 stop slower. Underexposing ISO 100 film by 2 stop may result in washout colors. No, because if you are underexposing, color will be more saturated. Try to understand. The moment you go and more you overexpose, the color will become pastel. But if you underexpose, the color will become more saturated. So washout color will happen only when you overexpose. Okay, but you are underexposing, so color will be more saturated. Image improvement? No. Loss of shaded detail? Yes. More you underexpose, less and less detail you will get in the shadow area. So correct answer is loss of shadow details. Greater dynamic range, it has nothing to do with that. Okay, so can we break for 10 minutes quickly? Because I need little rest. So it's 11:15. We'll meet after 10 minutes. So 11:20, we'll be back.
Okay, sir.
Meanwhile, you can think of any doubt if you have. We will take it up in the end.
Okay, sir.
Okay, guys. So we are back. Okay. So changing ISO from 1600 to 100, what happens? Sensor become more sensitive, camera lowers the grain, depth of field increases, exposure remains the same. Now it's a little difficult to understand. It says camera lowers the gain. If there is a sensor, the sensor itself will be the same. Sensor do not change, but sensor itself do not become more sensitive. You understand? There is a mechanism by which you can change the sensitivity of the sensor, but the sensor would remain same as such, if I may say so. Camera lowers the gain level. The level of gain increases or decreases by changing the ISO setting in a digital camera. So digital is a little difficult to understand sometimes. There may be tricky question like this. Depth of field increasing, it has nothing to do with that. Exposure remains same? No. When it will change from here and there, exposure would also shift. An increase in ISO means, just give me a moment. Okay. An increase in ISO means less grain, sensor receive more photons, sensor applies more grain, lower image contrast. Please understand the difference. What exactly is the question is? An increase in ISO means, which means if I'm moving from 100 ASA to 200 ASA, it will become more grainy. Okay, so it will not become less grainy. Sensor receive more photons? No. sensor will receive same number of photon, because photon is the amount of light entering inside the lens, which means quantity of light. So if outdoor 100-foot candle of light is entering at 100 ASA, also 100-foot candle enter, 400 ASA also 100-foot candle will enter. So amount of light entering inside the lens would remain same. C, sensor applies more gain so that you can capture the light, capture the image better. And increase in ISO means sensor applies more gain. Lower image contrast? No. On the contrary, image contrast increases as the ISO increases. This we have already told you. Okay. ISO 50 film is best used in, very tricky question, which means fine grain film. Fine grain film cannot be used in the moonlight because moonlight is a low light condition. Indoor is also low light condition. Bright sunlight, yes, because you need more light to capture at a slower speed. Cloudy shade, no. Even for cloudy shade, you need at least 100 ASA, not 50 ASA. You can shoot it, but then you will not get the f16 or f11 kind of aperture. You will get f8 or maybe 5.6. Pushing ISO 500 to 1000 again is a pushing in process. I will delete these questions because now I think it may not be required. Pushed and pull. I have explained you, but I think they will not ask these more difficult question. Had we shooting on negative, then probably this question could have been asked. Which ISO setting result in a lower exposure latitude? Exposure latitude, I will talk about later on. So right now I'm leaving this question number 77. I will mark it here so that when we discuss the exposure latitude, we will also discuss this. Why the answer is 250 or something, we will discuss that. Okay. ISO rating is primarily used to adjust white balance. It has nothing to do with white balance. Balance color, no. Calibration exposure, yes. Because I told you there are three parameters which we can change here and there. One is a shutter speed, another is a aperture, and third is a film speed. These three parameters we can change to control our exposure. Set camera format, no, it has nothing to do with that. Film speed impacts focal length, it has nothing to do. Sensor size, also nothing to do with the film speed. Image grain is, one need to think. Lens sharpness, no, lens has nothing to do with the speed of the film. Okay. So image grain, because grain will become more or grain will become less if the speed of the film will change. So sensor size will remain same, focal length will, lens sharpness remain same, only the image grain. Various kind of technical terms are being introduced so that you don't get confused, you remain focused what exactly this film speed is all about. ISO 400 is equivalent to, अब ये थोड़ा ट्रिकी क्वेश्चन है, ध्यान से सुनिएगा इसको जरा. 2 stop faster than 100 ASA, 3 stop fast, 3 stop slower than, okay, if I ask you this much, forget about the question. If I say what is 2 stop faster than 100, which means I am talking about 400 ASA film, correct? I'm talking about 400 ASA film. 3 stops slower than 1600. 16 means 800 is 1 stop, 400 is 2 stop, and 200 is 3 stop. Okay, so 3 stop will be 200, same as ASA 400, all of the above. 400 ASA is 2 stop faster.
Sir,
Listen carefully the question once again. I'm rechecking these answers because somebody gave me. I asked someone, a sensible student of ours who is working in a Bombay, so I cannot go blindly unless I check myself. ISO 400 is equivalent to 2 stop faster than ISO 100. Is it, will it be equivalent to that? If I say what is, okay, if I reframe the question, what is 2 stop faster than 100 DSA? 2 stop means 200, 400. Correct? 2 stop faster film than 100 ASA film will be what? 400 ASA film. 3 stops slower than 1600. Slow means below. So 16 means 800 is 1 stop, 400 is 2 stop, and 200 is 3 stop. Again, this question of 1600, if I'll go 3 stops slower, 1 stop is 800, 2 stop is 400, 3 stop is 200. So this is wrong. Okay, same as 400 ASA, that is equivalent to ISO 400 and ASA is a two different nomenclature. That is fine. All of the above, no, because we figure it out. The B is 3 stops slower than 1600 would be 1 stop is 800, 2 stop is 400, 3 stop is 200. So here, if I correct like this, if I make it two stop, 2 stops slower than ISO 1600 will be what? 400. So question A and B both are correct. Let me just reformulate the question. Question A and B both are correct right now because 2 stops faster than 100 is 400. 2 stops slower than 1600 is 400. Same as 400 equivalent to 400. This is also correct. And D, all of the above. Now the question is correct. Now the D answer is correct because if I change that 3 stop to 2 stop. Is it clear to everybody? So he applied a mind, but here he missed the boat. It's a very tricky question. 2 stop faster, 2 stop slower, same as 400, all of the above. So now this is the correct answer. Question. And hence now the D is correct answer. Is it clear to everybody? Okay. Human eye in a bright light behaves like. Try to understand this is, we will discuss the eye also because structure of eye can be asked in examination. Eye is like a lens. So you have to understand eye a little bit better. So there is also this term called aperture. Aperture is being picked up from the eyes basically. We also have this little aperture which becomes shrink sometime, which becomes little wider, as if our opening has become wider. So when there is a bright light, for example, okay, human eye in a bright light behave like is a little tricky question because you cannot compare the eye with the ASA of a film. You got my point? But here there is a trick. Trick is what is normal? In a normal, what is normal in the daylight? Which film is most probably used in the daylight? Normal, 100 ASA. Okay. So he is indirectly asking you which is a normal film which you use outdoor in a bright sunlight. Are you getting the point? How the eye is compared with the ISO, which means normal film. Normal film for outdoor photography is 100. So he is connecting the normality with the human eye. Little tricky, but you need to understand the intention behind the question. Which ISO is ideal for slow motion daylight shot with open aperture? Very, very tricky question. Who will explain this question? Hanji. The answer is written C, but I am saying
Sir,
okay.
may I?
Yeah, please.
For example, like in a digital camera, to shoot slow motion, we need a higher FPS number. That means we need more light.
High frame per second means if instead of shooting 24 frame per second, you are shooting, let's say, for example,
60.
48, and double of 48 is 96, and double of 96.
Yeah.
That's how you go about it. Okay. So let's say,
Yeah.
for example, you are shooting at a 96 frame per second.
Yes. So in that scenario, we would need more light. Hence, we would need a lower ISO count.
So you need more light.
Yeah.
Okay. So you need more light means See, the question is which ISO is ideal for slow motion daylight shot with an open aperture. Open aperture means I am shooting at f2.8 or
Yes.
whatever opening up I have, for example. So which means I am not shooting at f11 or f16. Outdoor, normally people shoot at what aperture?
It
11 or 16, right? It's too bright. But
Yeah.
when we shoot at 11 and 16, when you have a 100 ASA film, correct? If your film is 100 ASA, you shoot at f11 or f16. Are you getting my point? See, don't go by the answer written over there. There has to be a logic. That's why I'm checking here and
Like, for example, if I want a, a shallower depth of field, then in that scenario, I can keep a
no,
lower
no, no,
aperture.
we are not talking about the depth of field. We are talking about the slow motion. Try to understand this word called
No,
slow motion.
like we can also use a lower F number, right? We can also do it with 2.8 and use an ND filter.
No, but it is already saying that you are shooting with the open aperture, which means you are already shooting the widest opening, whether it is f2, 2.8 or 1.4.
Yes, yes.
So question tried. That's why I'm again saying you need to find a correct answer after understanding the question. Which ISO is ideal for slow motion daylight shots with open aperture? Which means he is saying f 1.4 I'm shooting.
Hmm.
Okay. Normally you shoot at f16 or f11. Correct or not? Normally, if you're not shooting outdoor, let's say for example, 100 ASA film you have,
Hmm.
we are shooting with motion picture camera also. Let's say for example, which is 1/48th of a second, I will say 1/60th of a second. So I'm comparing with a still 100 ASA film, 1/60th of a second. My aperture is f11. That is normally you get. Okay, am I right or wrong? In still
Uh,
photography, this is
yeah,
the normal scenario. If
yeah.
I'm using a 100 ASA film, do most of you have a camera. If you shoot at 1/60th of a second, normally you get around f11 or 16. So
Hmm.
this is a very, very tricky statement.
Yes.
Normally you shoot at 100 ASA 1/60th of a second and f11. Normally. Okay. Now he is saying he has introduced a tricky word into it, which means slow motion daylight. So when if this is my exposure and if I have to take a slow motion shot, what I'm going to do, instead of my, when you do the slow motion, what exactly happens? So this is 24 frame. 1/60 means 24 frame per second. I am shooting at 48 frame. Let's say for example. So when I'm shooting at 48 frame per second, I need, what I'm doing is I need more light. You got my point? So instead of 1/60th, what I'm doing now, slow motion is, I'm if I use that terminology, I need more light. More light means I will open up something. In motion picture, you cannot change the shutter speed. It remains 1/48th of a second. Remember it. Okay. So this is a motion picture shot. This shot number 84 is about motion picture cameras, not about the still cameras. So outdoor, I cannot touch my 1/60th of a thing. So option I remain with me is I need now from, if I go for 24 frame to 48 frame, I will, here I have, what I have done is I have cut down the light. Okay. So what I have to do is from F, if I have, earlier I was shooting at f11, I have to shoot at f8. Okay. Now I don't want to shoot at 48. I want proper slow motion, which means 96 frame per second. So to compensate that exposure of light, I have to shoot at f 5.6. Right or wrong? Are you able to understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Once again, those people are not saying, nobody is saying anything. So I will repeat again. This is actually a slow motion thing which I should have discussed separately, but since it is now included, so I will talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
In motion picture camera, you have a shutter speed by 1 by 48th of a second when you are shooting 24 frame per second. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, let's say, for example, outdoor 100 ASA film. Okay. And for this 1/48th of a second, normal exposure, if you calculate outdoor, is f11 or f16. Normally, this is a state of affair. Now, instead of 24 frame per second, I go for 48 FPS. So what I have done is, I have cut down the shutter speed. Okay. So what I am doing is, in a still photography language, if I use a still photography language, from f11, I need to compensate. Either I add more lights, which I cannot. So instead of f11, I will shoot at f8. One stop compensation I would give in my exposure. My ASA remains same. Okay. One stop. But 48 frame, hardly you get to see the slow motion. So you shoot at a 96 frame per second. So in order to shoot 90 frame per second, your exposure would be need a more one stop brighter, more light. So from f8, I would go to f5.6. Clear to you?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is a one way of going. This is a one way of going, that I would open up my aperture to compensate the light which is required from going from 24 frame to 48, 48 to 96. I need to give a two-stop compensation. Is it clear to everybody or not? This
Yes, sir.
compensation.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now read the question again. Which ISO is ideal for slow motion daylight shot with open aperture? Now he has restricted your hand. He want Dimple Kapadia would come out of a water or some other actress, and you need a shallow depth of field. And that's why he want a open aperture. Why do you need open aperture? When you want a
More light.
shallow field. When you want a shallow depth of field, so I don't want f8 or I don't want f.6. I want how much? f2. Let's say
2
for
point.
example, 2.8. Let's say 2.8. So what I'm going to do, I need to, from 5.6 to go to 2.8. Okay. So what I can do is 96 frame per second, but my camera do not allow me to go high speed than that. Arri 3 camera do not allow you to go, let's say, for example, more than 96 frame. This was a restriction with certain cameras. Arri 2C, Arri 3, Arri 435 came. What was the feature which increased was a more frame per second. So more frame per second, you cannot go from here more than 96. Are you getting my point? So what you're going to do, you can cut down when you switch these frame per second business, you open up the aperture. Correct? But if you use the, instead of 100 ASA, here the answer is C, 50 ASA. Why it is saying 50 ASA? You need to understand the reason. That which ISO is ideal for slow motion daylight shot with the open aperture. Because if you have a ISO higher, for example, 1600, 1500, 50 or 320, do you think this answer is correct, C or not? Let's first let me go reverse. Is this answer is correct or wrong?
Right, sir. Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
How many of you say it is correct answer? It
Sir,
can be
I.
wrong. Okay. Remember it. I have not checked this answer. I'm checking now. Somebody else has given in me these answers, question answers. I ask him. So I am rechecking before I shoot it to you. But like earlier, we corrected one question. There was a correction required in that. He used his mind very often. He's very sharp mind guy, but experience is also required sometimes. So this particular question need experience. He has formulated a question very correctly, But answer is correct or not, that is my question. There could be a high ASA or there could be a ISO 50. So what is the advantage? Let me explain to you. What is the advantage if you're shooting at ISO 1600? Because you have a leverage. You already have 100 to 200, 400, 800 and 1600. If you're shooting with a 100 ASA film, 200, 400, 800 and 1600, you have a 4-stop gain of light in your kitty already. Are you getting my point? Are you able to understand? If you're shooting at f11 and 16, he has restricted your hands by saying open aperture. Now aperture, how below you can go in the aperture? You can go up to 2.8. Below that, let's say for example, you have a lens, zoom lens. Zoom lens do not have a 2.8 normal opening. Sometimes it is 4 or 5.6 only. Okay. So I assume, let's say for example, if your zoom lens has an opening of 2.8, which is nowadays it is available, but little more expensive. So if your zoom lens has an opening of 2.8, and if you still want to shoot more, let's say for example, if your camera allows, you can still cut down, you can go open up already. But he is already saying that you're shooting at f2.8. He is already saying you already have a 2.8, you can't open up the aperture. So what is required? Where you can gain the light by having a high speed film. Are you able to understand? There are two parameters you can play around with. One parameter he has restricted, which is your opening, open aperture, full opening, 2.8, let's say for example. It should have been more appropriate. The exact term should be slow motion shot with full opening. Let's say for example, let me correct this question more better. Full opening of the aperture at 2.8. Already I have defined full opening. Okay. So now I cannot open the aperture. But my camera allows me to shoot, let's say for example, 400 frames per second. I'm more ambitious. My camera allows me to go up to 400. So to compensate up to that, let's say for example, again, the moment you increase more, let's say 96 means 100. From 100 to 200 frame per second, if I will go, from 5.6, I need 4. Are you getting my point? The one-stop compensation is required the moment you play with the shutter speed, like in a still photography. Okay. So here, frame per second, when you're changing, you're playing with the shutter speed primarily. Okay. So compensation is required over there. And in order to have a compensation, you need to open up the aperture. That is the one way. Second way is you more add lights. You boost up the light level. Instead of fix your aperture, boost up the more light with the additional light, which you can't. He is saying that you can use a higher ISO to compensate your light. So, but at the same time, he is also saying slow motion daylight shots. Slow motion daylight shot. So to me, this answer of 50 ASA is not correct. How I can go up? How can boost if I'm using a 50 ASA film? I cannot. I don't have that tool. I don't have that freedom. My freedom lies with only when I am using a highest available shutter speed or highest available film speed at that point. Only then I can compensate. I cannot go from f11 to 8 to 2 because he's already saying you are at f8 to 2.8. So from where you will give the compensation? Compensation can come only when you can gain the ISO. Are you able to understand? So this correct answer is not actually C. Correct answer is 1600. Are you getting my point or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Correct answer is more the speed I can have, only then I will be able to play with the more number of frame per second. Are you able to understand the logic or not?
Yes, sir. Sir, can I
Even
say something?
Yes, sir.
please
There's one doubt, sir. सर
बोलिए.
लाइट एपर्चर 2.8 पे भी ज्यादा आएगी, और अगर हम 1600 पे भी रखते हैं, उस पे भी हम लोग सेंसिटिविटी और बढ़ा दिए, तो ग्रेन्स थोड़े ज्यादा नहीं आ जाएंगे सर? मेरे ये कहना है,
Abhi,
हम
this
लोग
is the
मिड।
advantage. If you look into the Alexa, Red, and all that, their native ISO is very high already. It is not 100 ASA.
हाँ,
Read little bit
डिफॉल्ट
more
तो
about the Alexa and Red camera. Their native 1600 is not a grainy structure today.
ओके।
Today's time, 1800 is not, 1600 is not a grainy structure. That's the
हम्म।
advantage of digital technology.
ओके।
See, I need a tool where I need to
हम्म।
compensate for the exposure. So one is to
हम्म।
boost more lights. Okay. That you can't do outdoor, for example. What another option you have? You should have you gain in a speed. You replace the film with a high speed. High speed means 100 ASA, 200 ASA,
आईएसओ।
more than
हाँ।
400. So my option over
हम्म।
here is given 1600. So why I will
हम्म।
go 50 ASA?
या अंडरस्टूड।
I will go for the highest ASA so that I can compensate over there by gain in using my high speed film. Are you able to understand? Is it clear to everybody? So that was not
या
the correct answer. Answer A is correct. Okay. High ISO film often lacks what? Shadow detail, color vibrancy, color contrast, all of the above. Yes, all these things. If your film, if you're using the higher ISO film, shadow details are there for sure, but you don't get that much kind of a thing. Color vibrancy, color also become little shift in the color is there. Contrast is also a problem. So all these things are there. So correct answer is D. ISO 250D is designed for, D means daylight, designed for both the situation basically. D stand for daylight, but you can shoot in a low light condition also, and it give you enough sensitivity to shoot in the low light as well as daylight. So 250 many people use, but many people also did not use 250. They preferred still the 100 ASA because this stock has a little problem. It never became very popular in those days when the negative was used. So it's not really very interesting question. Let me just delete this. Okay. Increase ISO from 200 to 400 require you to, what you're doing is you are increasing from 200 to 400. So one stop gain of light. So you need to cut down one stop. So cut down one stop means what? Decrease exposure, increase exposure, use faster shutter, reduce light. Now try to understand this question. Increase from 200 to 400 require you to decrease the exposure. You need to cut down the exposure, correct? Because if you are shifting your, there's a correct exposure right now, for example, for any combination. From there, I shift the dial from 400, 200 to 400. So what I've done is I have gained one stop. So if I have gained one stop in the exposure, I need to cut down the exposure also by one stop, right? So what I will do is I will decrease the exposure by one stop. They have not mentioned here. I would say decrease exposure by one stop to make the answer more appropriate. Okay. That is a one way. I can also increase and decrease the exposure aperture. But if I increase the aperture, when you say increase the aperture means f8 to f11, what I'm doing is I am cutting down the intensity. By increasing the aperture, I am cutting down the, increasing the aperture means from say f11 to f16. That is the meaning of increasing the aperture. Correct? I'm explaining these terms over here. Used faster shutter speed, which means if I'm using, let's say, for example, 1 by 1/25th of a second, if I go to 1 by 1/250th of a second, what I'm going to do is I'm again cutting down the intensity. Sorry, 1/25th to 1 to 500 of a second, for example, or sorry, 250 of a second. If I'm moving from faster shutter, which means 1/25th to 250th of a second, what I'm doing is I'm cutting down the intensity, decreasing by one stop, increasing aperture by reduce the. I will reformulate this question so that it will be less confusing. I am just avoiding now for the timing so that this question is not correctly formulated by him. I'll reformulate this question and send it across to you because it is very confusing right now. In digital video, idea is same, but he has not formulated the question. So let me reformulate it again. In digital video, increase ISO mimic. Aperture, again, we have discussed already, sensor gain boosting. It is a boosting over there, but he's talking about the digital video, not the digital cameras as such. Video used to use a tape. Today, tape is obsolete. There is only the card recording. Hard disk recording, we call it as a fast film is preferred when there is too much of a light, there is motion in slow motion, there is motion in slow light. Try to understand this again as slow motion. Slow motion is not always slow motion. Motion can also be faster. You can see sometimes people are walking very fast. Okay. So motion are normal, fast motion and slow motion. So there is a motion in low light. You want more detail. You want shadow depth of it. Again, it is a confusing question. I will reframe this and give you. Not correctly framed. Okay. This I have already told you. ISO rating in a picture negative in earlier days are generally 100, 200 and it is a logarithmic. 91. ISO 100 is how many stops slower than 800? Again, 200, 400, 800. So basically the 3 stop. 200, 400 and 800. उंगली पे काउंट कर सकते हैं. You can 3. This is the correct answer. 400 film exposed at 800 will produced. Again, what you are doing is pushing 400 to 800. So it will be underexposed. And if the film is underexposed, image will also be underexposed image until unless you are not processing in a pushing manner. But image itself, if you normally process it with a normal way, it will be a underexposed image. As simple as that. If you just shoot normally, is let's say for example, out of 36 exposure, if 5 or 6 exposures are not correctly exposed and the entire reel is exposed properly, so those images would be underexposed. So what exactly happen is it's a very simple question because he's asking about a few exposures out of 36 exposure in a cassette. If every exposure is correct and 5 6 are not correct, or if the entire film is rated from 400 to 800, for example, you are underexposing the image by one stop. Okay, that we do to gain the speed in a low light condition level, which I have already explained to you guys. Fast film are often used for studio shoot. No. Oh, sorry. Fast films are often used for studio shoot. Yes, sometimes we can shoot in a studio if it is required to be outdoor, let's say for example inside the studio. Studio does not means in interior always. Outdoor daylight, no outdoor daylight, we use the 100 ASA. Action and night scene, please try to understand. Action sometimes need the slow motion. Okay, you have seen many action films in which slow motion is very often required when somebody is hitting someone or somebody is falling. There is always a slow motion. And night scene has a low light condition. So obviously you need the fast speed. VFX shot, no, not necessarily you need the fast speed. You can use the 100 ASA film also. Studio shoot also, you can use 100 ASA. So when you talk about the fast film, normally we say the 800 ASA plus. So whenever you need, again the same thing has come, slow motion. Remember, we discussed about slow motion. Why that 18, why that 50 ASA was the wrong choice? Because in action, you need to shoot at a slow motion. And slow motion means you need a boost the light level and you don't have lights. So what you're going to do is boost through your gaining the speed via ASA. Filmmaker wants sharp, clean image, which ISO again fine grain. Fine grain means whatever the fine grain available. Here it is 100 ASA. So 100 ASA is the fine grain film we need. ISO 320 is best avoided unless you are outdoor. Outdoor there is too much light, so I don't need it. You want less noise. Everybody want less noise. Why noise is required in the image? Nobody want the image to be noisy. You want low light scene. You want low light scenes. When you really want very, very dim light situation, obviously 320 ASA would be required. You shoot on a tripod? No. Even if I can shoot with the without tripod also. Okay. Question number 97. Shoot ISO 500 film at ISO 1000 is called, again pushing pulling. Remember, forget about this because this is not going to be asked. It was too much of a history of picture negative. Using a slower ISO means more light needed? No. Yes, yes. Because if you're using a slower means 50 SA. If you're shooting a 50 SA, you can shoot only in the daylight, which means there should be enough light, which means more light is needed, which is correct. Fewer highlights, no, it has nothing to do with that. Higher gain, more noise, no. Using a slower ISO means more light needed simply because you are going to shoot in the proper daylight. Fast film is equal to high ISO, yes. Equal to what? Again, he has put the two equals. Fast film means higher ISO, yes, which means low sensitivity. No, it is a very high sensitivity. Highlight sensitivity. Please try to understand the difference. Highlight sensitivity require more light, lower grain. Now, this is again a confusing question he has formulated. Let me just try to reframe. Fast film equal to higher ISO, which means require more light. No, it requires less light. Lower grain. No, it will have a more grain. High light sensitivity. Lower sensitivity. The highlight should not be there. It should be called higher sensitivity. It should be called higher sensitivity. So only then the B will be correct answer. When you say higher sensitivity, not the highlight sensitivity. Highlight has a different word. Highlight, shadow are opposite to each other. Higher is the correct word. So maybe he wanted to say that, but he did not use the correct word. So higher sensitivity, fast film, high ISO, higher sensitivity. Okay. Question number 100. Sometime single word can mess up the whole meaning of the entire thing. Which ISO film is best for bright sunny beach scene? Whether it's a beach scene or whether it is some garden or whatever, it is a bright sunny light. So naturally, whatever the finest film you can have is 100. So 100 ASA is the film which you will be using. Is it clear, guys? Somebody took almost 5 hours or 4 hours to formulate these questions. Since I did not
Yes,
have
sir.
time, so I requested, but
Yes,
he
sir.
digged out a couple of places and maybe of his own, and everything need to be cross-checked before I say this is correct one. But there are certain questions which I have deleted. I will reframe these questions. Some of the questions which I said I will reframe and then send it across to you. Some correction I could do it immediately. So this is in brief. Now you can ask your question and clarify any doubt. If you have not understood, it is a very important to understand. If you understand something, you can answer it. You can't mug it up. Understanding is the primary criteria to answer any MCQ or, for that matter, description.
Sir, I have a question, sir.
बोलिए.
Sir, question number 54, sir. I was having little doubts like is it
Wait. Question number 54.
yes, sir.
Let me just go to question number 54. This was this pushing pulling business.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I would say forget about it, but I'll still explain. Okay. Earlier days, I'm talking about the 1989 when I started the photography. In the market, you will find 100 ASA daylight film very easily. Okay. But when I used to shoot the performance in the Kamani Auditorium, I was studying the still photography at Triveni Kalasangam. To find up to 400 ASA film, tungsten balance was easy. Still, it was expensive, but it is still. But to find a 800 ASA film was very difficult, almost not existing in India. So what we used to do is we will buy a 400 ASA film and rate and consider that it is a 800 ASA. Okay. And we shoot the entire performance at 800. So what we are doing is we are underexposing one stop. Correct?
Hmm.
If I am using a 400 ASA tungsten film, shooting a performance inside the auditorium, rating it as considering that it is not 400 but it is 800, but actually it is 400. So what I am consciously doing is I am underexposing one stop. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Now in the time of processing, you overdevelop it. Suppose the developing time is 3 minutes. I will also explain you the black and white development maybe in a 1 or 2 days. So when you develop, let's say for example, 4 minutes is the development time. Instead of 4 minutes, as per the experience of the guy who process, he will process for 7 minutes or 8 minutes. So we used to call it as a push process. We used to call it as a push. We are pushing 400 to 800. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now it is a reverse. There was a reverse system also. Sometimes people would do that also. There's a reason behind it why they would do it. Now already there's a 200 ASA film is available. So why the hell you are rating 400 ASA film to 200 ASA?
Hmm.
Okay. So sometime there was for consciously people would like to pull the process in the processing. So they will rate the 400 film to 200 and accordingly there is certain desired effect. So what you are doing is rating 400 to 200, you are overexposing the film. So if you are overexposing the film in the time of so so, so what you are doing is basically you are overexposing the film. In journal, forget about this word called pulling. Okay, forget this word pulling. In journal, if you are rating a 400 ASA film and considering it as a 200 ASA and shooting, what is going to happen? It is going to overexpose one stop. Right or wrong? So
Yeah.
this process of rating a higher ASA to a lower ASA was called pulling. Because in the time of processing, you are going to underdevelop now. If the time was 4 minutes, as per the experience, it will be underdeveloped for 3 minutes to get the desired effect. So this is a pushing and pulling process. I don't know because he has also studied in craft many years back. So he has included these questions of pushing and pulling because certain thing we teach the history of picture negative also. So maybe because it is connected with the ASA, he has added these questions. But these questions will not be asked in a pushing pulling business. But he has added, so I'll remove certain questions from here to make your life a little more simpler.
Okay, sir. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sir, one thing I wanted to ask about the exam.
हाँ जी.
You have told it before, but the MSQ part. So,
जी.
you mean that we won't have questions that will have more than one correct answer, right?
Yes. Yes.
But
But
we will have technical questions.
that is what they have written in that MCQ thing. Read that part carefully.
Okay.
According to my understanding, okay, I'll again go and read it out for you. I have quickly kept it somewhere. Let me just figure it out where it is. Okay, guys. Where the serial number paper 1, paper 2 is being mentioned with the blue thing, it says clearly at the bottom, paper 1 will consist of questions covering allied arts, which means dance, painting, music, etc., theater, literature, and general knowledge and awareness, which means could be any damn thing under the sun, relevant to the course requirements. ठीक है जी, मतलब उनको लगता है कि आपको पता होना चाहिए जहां दीदी कौन है, तो हो सकता है कि आर्किटेक्चर के ऊपर एक क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया जाएगा, एक पेंटिंग पे पूछा जा सकता है, एक लिटरेचर पे पूछा जा सकता है, किसी चीज पे भी कुछ भी पूछा जा सकता है। नौकर की कमीज, बोलिए किसने लिखा है नॉवल नौकर की कमीज, जल्दी से बोलो।
विनोद कुमार शुक्ल।
वेरी गुड। क्यों? क्योंकि इस साल उसे साहित्य अकेडमी अवार्ड मिला गया है। ठीक है जी, और इसके ऊपर फिल्म बनी है। फिल्म किसने बनाई है, जल्दी से बताओ। इसका मतलब सो रहे हो तुम लोग। क्वेश्चन है मेरा एमसीक्यू के अंदर, वहां पर किताब के अंदर, ऑनलाइन में देखो ध्यान से जाके। इट इज डायरेक्टेड बाय मणि कौल।
यस यस यस।
ओके, तो कुछ भी पूछा जा सकता है। मैं करूंगा ये मैं इस बार पांच पांच दिन का एमसीक्यू क्यों लूंगा, क्योंकि क्या क्या इंपॉर्टेंट है लिटरेचर के हिसाब से, कहाँ कहाँ जो करंट, मैं उसको कर नहीं पाया हूँ अपडेट अभी उस वेबसाइट को। वो 24 के क्वेश्चन हटा के 25 के डालने हैं, ऑस्कर वॉस्कर ये सब जो है, उसमें टाइम लग रहा है मुझे थोड़ा सा, बट आई डू इट विद इन बाई 10th of this month. I kept a deadline for myself. But this technical MCQ is much more important. So I took a help for someone so that I could, but in future I will see, I'll prepare myself so that I am more sure that answers are correct. So it says that, and questions specifically related to the chosen area of specialization. तो आपका स्पेशलाइजेशन एरिया क्या है? सिनेमेटोग्राफी, करेक्ट? तो इसका क्या मतलब हुआ? इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि टेक्निकल क्वेश्चन जो हम सर फोड़ रहे हैं 2 घंटे से, इस टाइप का कोई भी क्वेश्चन पूछा जा सकता है। अब ये बात हर आदमी को समझ नहीं आ रही, ये इन्होंने कंफ्यूजन पैदा कर दिया गधों ने, कि इसको तुम अलग से लिख देते और ये बता देते कि 60 में से हम 20 मार्क्स या 30 मार्क्स से क्वेश्चन पूछेंगे, तो कोई आफत आ जाती? नहीं आती ना। जो कंफ्यूजन लोगों की खोपड़ी में चल रहा है कि क्या होगा क्या नहीं होगा, कि आधों को तो लग रहा है अरे टेक्निकल क्वेश्चन नहीं आएंगे, खुश हो रहे हैं लोग, तुक्का मार मूर के आ जाएंगे वहां पर, बट लोग भूलते हैं कि इसमें निगेटिव मार्किंग भी है। वो भी मैं आपसे डिस्कस करना चाहता हूं थोड़ा क्विकली। अब आप समझिए, देर आर 2 सिचुएशंस, 4 क्वेश्चंस हैं आपके पास, ठीक है जी। हर एक के अंदर 0.50 का निगेटिव मार्किंग है, मतलब अगर आपने सही लगा दिया तो 2 मार्क्स मिल गए आपको, और अगर आपने गलत लगाया तो आपके 0.5 मार्क्स कट जाएंगे। 25% का निगेटिव मार्किंग है, करेक्ट? यस और नो? ठीक है जी।
यस
तो
सर।
वो 2 बच्चे हैं जिसने तुक्का लगाया, ठीक है जी। उसने पहले पे तुक्का लगाया, उसका गलत हो गया। दूसरे पे तुक्का लगाया, फिर गलत हो गया उसका। तीसरे पे तुक्का लगाया, वो भी गलत हो गया। चौथे पे तुक्का लगाया, वो ठीक हो गया, करेक्ट? तो उसके मार्क्स कितने हुए? 2 मार्क्स मिल गए उसको, फुल मार्क्स। किस चीज के? जिसमें उसने तुक्का लगाया था। और जो 3 गलत लगाए उसके 1.5 मार्क्स कट गए। तो टोटल मार्क्स कितने मिले उसको? 0.50, करेक्ट? अब एक दूसरा ब्रह्मज्ञानी है, वो कहता है गलत मैं अगर लगाऊंगा तो मेरे तो मार्क्स कट जाएंगे, तो वो अटेम्प्ट ही नहीं करके आता। तो प्रोबेबिलिटी जिसने ध्यान से पढ़ी है वो अगर सोचेगा, तो अगर मैं 4 में से अगर एक क्वेश्चन भी मेरा लग गया तुक्का, तुक्के की बात कर रहा हूं मैं, तब भी मुझे 0.5 मार्क्स मिलेंगे। तो कुछ मिले मेरे को, निगेटिव मार्किंग होने के बावजूद भी मुझे पॉइंट्स मिले, ठीक है जी। तो इट इज ऑलवेज बेटर टू अटेम्प्ट rather than leaving a question even if your answer you are not 100% sure. खास तौर पे उठपटांग की जो जीके आती है उसकी बात कर रहा हूं मैं, इसमें तो 100% श्योरिटी है। अगर आपने ठीक से पढ़ाई वढ़ाई की है तो आपको पल्ले पड़ जाएगा ये सब। समझे आप मेरी बात? सो दिस इज द गेम ऑफ whatever you would like to call it. So attempt all the questions despite the fact. मैं पहले पॉज कर लूँ जरा रिकॉर्डिंग को, या रिकॉर्डिंग को स्टॉप कर लेता हूँ.